I made a tier list with Yu-Gi-Oh's most powerful banned cards. Today, big dog, I'm going to be explaining to you why these cards are banned, as well as talking about some cards that could very much come off or go on the forbidden list. Let's go ahead and jump on in. All right, big dogs, here we are, and this is going to be a little bit different than our previous tier list. As you can see, there are 5 different categories here that mean so many different things. Keep it banned is exactly what it means, but potential means that this card is ban worthy, but it could come off under certain circumstances. Can be limited are cards that can come straight off the ban list to either limited, semi-limited, or unlimited. Cards that can be limited can come straight off the ban list to limited, and unlimited this right now are cards that probably shouldn't be on the ban list. The last category I have here is copium. It's pretty much self-explanatory. Almost everybody has it. And I'm going to be explaining to you why these cards are on the ban list and if they can come out or not. And while not every single card on the ban list is here, fortunately enough, they fit into certain categories and we can talk about them all together. Let's go ahead and start off this tier list with Elder Entity Norden. This monster is pretty powerful as it requires a Synchro and an X-Seed and can summon a monster from your graveyard. If this card came out, I don't know, in 2015, it's dangerous. But in 2024 Yu-Gi-Oh, I think that this is a card that can 100% be limited. With Instant Fusion being at 1, this card is not the menace that it once was, and ironically, it's more of a super polymerization target than anything. I think that Masterpiece, the Draco Slaying King, is not even a Draco Slaying King, it's like the Draco Slaying Light or something. This card is crazy powerful. It's unaffected by the cards that it tributes, and it can tribute spell and trap cards. It has natural synergies with decks like Centurion or Snake Eyes. I think that this is another one of those cards that's not really as strong. Masterpiece was banned in 2017 because it was an incredibly powerful monster that can interact on both players' turns. Nowadays, we have cards with longer text, more effects, and are far more devastating. Also, keep in mind with cards like Dragonic Diagram at 1, this card is not searchable, and typically if you were to play this inside of Centurion or Snake Eyes, you're actually losing resources. Cards that you don't want to have in your graveyard are now in your graveyard. I would 100% put Maxx C and keep it banned. Keep that thing as far away from us as possible. Maxx C was banned because it creates situations where you can summon a bunch of times and then your opponent will be punished for summoning themselves. This is similar to the Vanity's Emptiness or the summon limits or even the Royal Oppressions in the game. Let's face it, guys, Yu-Gi-Oh is built on special summoning, and it doesn't matter what type of card it is. They've made it some of the worst cards in the game. They've made it a continuous trap card. It's still not productive to have these type of cards in the game. Unless, of course, you're the OCG or Master Duel. For some reason, they still think it's okay. Everybody loves Maxx C until they getting Maxx C against a full board. Now, I think Heavy Metal Foes Electromite is one of those cards that is banned but has potential. Basically, what I mean about Electromite is that it can very much come off the list. The biggest problem with Electromite isn't necessarily its power. It's actually a fair Yu-Gi-Oh card. Heavy Metal Foes Electromite was banned during a time where Konami wanted to decentralize the power in Yu-Gi-Oh strategies. Orchist and Endamian as well as Solomon Grade were also some casualties of that ban list. But now, those cards are completely off the list. It just goes to show that 2019 Yu-Gi-Oh doesn't hold a candle to 2021 Yu-Gi-Oh. But on the other side, I think that Electromite creates something that shouldn't be for the game, and it combines an entire Yu-Gi-Oh mechanic. Now, another Master Rule could potentially change that, or Konami could actually design pendulum strategies that work separately with one another but can't work with each other and are still good. That will require a brain over there. Brain Kids was hit during another decentralization of power in Yu-Gi-Oh. It was always the wrong move to ban Meow Meow Mew, as the strategy isn't even strong enough to keep up in 2024 Yu-Gi-Oh. And Nightmare Goblin was banned because players summoned way too many monsters. You serious? This is another one of those cards that is banned but has a ton of potential. I think Nightmare Goblin is one of those cards that can be limited and would spark a little bit of controversy. Yes, it could give you an additional normal summon, and I believe it gives you target protection too. But in order to get that additional normal summon, you would have to invest 4 monsters. This isn't the same old Yu-Gi-Oh as back in the day. This card is not as powerful anymore. Eva is another one of those cards that I think is banned but has a potential. The original reason why Eva was banned was because of Drytron Herald being able to summon monsters like Herald of Perfection and Herald of Ultimateness, but Yu-Gi-Oh has progressed so far past summoning an Omni Negation monster. And what I mean by that is that if you can play an in-archetype Omni Negation monster that actually has a requirement, that's cool. We've seen that happen with strategies like Voiceless Voice and Fiendsmith. I think that having Eva off the ban list is a boost to Drytron, kind of. Doesn't really work with the new cards because overall it's just a boost of fairies. Victory Dragon is 1000% copium, big dog. The reason why this card is genuinely banned on the ban list is because when it was legal for play, you weren't allowed to concede the match before this card could attack direct. Now, as you know it, we still technically aren't allowed to concede the match, but the odds of this card being utilized in competitive play is almost nil. Zodiac Dryden once had a combo where you can destroy your own monsters and make a pretty powerful board. The only problem with that is that the powerful board that it used to make is no longer really powerful anymore. I think one of the best things that happen in Yu-Gi-Oh! Were cards like Change of Heart and Snatch Steal coming into the game. It really does help you balance against cards like Zodiac Dryden. I think this is a card that can be limited. And by consequence, I also think that Appaloosa is a card that you're coping over. I mean, obviously you can limit it, but people only use one anyways. I think Appaloosa is that weird card where, yes, it's pretty powerful, but it's almost one of those necessary cards in the game. And then with counters like Triple Tactics Talent, Change of Heart, Ghost Ogre, Mind Control, there's so many to name. This becomes one of those healthy generic checks into the game. We previously talked about Omni Negations not necessarily being good. The thing about Appaloosa is that it is a negation, but it is not an Omni negation. It only can stop one particular thing and does have counters. Unlike cards like Baronne De Fleur and Borreload Savage Dragon, these cards can 100% stay banned. I think we can all agree that Yu-Gi-Oh! Is a lot better when strategy's main goal isn't to be able to make monsters like Baron and Borreload Savage Dragon over and over again. Ironically enough, for the last few years, the best strategies in Yu-Gi-Oh! Have been just to make Baron and Borreload. And while these cards did help certain strategies that are no longer viable, these were also cards that made going second a lot worse. And no one likes a Yu-Gi-Oh! Card game where it feels dice rolling, you win and you go first. I think that Pot of Greed is, I gotta put it in banned, but has potential. Pot of Greed is one of those cards. If you think about it, it's just a +1 that everybody will play. But if you genuinely think about it, that's all it is. Pot of Greed is one of those paradoxical cards where it's really weird to have into a format, but it doesn't necessarily do anything detrimental to the format other than just about everybody will play it. On the flip side, I don't think Graceful Charity could come off the ban list. It's not the draw 3 cards that's incredibly scary, it's the discard 2. That has so many applications for a ton of Yu-Gi-Oh! Strategies that can be ridiculous. And while we're on the mode of drawing cards, being able to infinitely draw cards, yeah, let's keep that banned. Carter Safe Return would just open up the avenue for so many gimmicky, I don't even think that they would be powerful or anything, but just the fact that an FTK exists, it shouldn't. And now that we're on the thing with FTKs, there are a ton of cards on the ban list that are like Mass Driver. I could literally go on forever about these cards. Tempest Magician, Tyrant Neptune, Starving Venom Fusion Dragon. Every single one of those cards are on the ban list because it participates in a sort of game that requires no interaction from the opponent. It is incredibly counterproductive to have any card that prevents a player from even interacting with the game and losing on the spot to exist. And I just opened up Pandora's box because there's a couple of cards that could be argued that feel like that. Some could say that about Mystic Mind, which I wholeheartedly agree. Others could say that about Albion and the Barrier Statue, and since this game is built on special summoning, you could say yes, that's pretty fair. We could also say this about cards like True King of All Calamities, Heroic Champion, whatever that card's name is, Elder Entity, Azathoth, and Shockmaster. Every single one of those cards prevent you from playing Yu-Gi-Oh!, which never feels fun, at least if you're going against it. But where exactly do we draw the line? Is it at Dimension Shifter? This card feels like you can't play the game from time to time, but I think it's more of a fact of Konami's bad game design than it is Shifter itself. You see, for so long, Konami has made decks focus on the graveyard. Players forget that there's other mechanics that decks can be built around. The hand, the deck, the field, not necessarily needing the graveyard is some of those. And the more that those decks get built, the worse this card is. I think Dimension Shifter is a card that can get banned, but I can also see the reasoning for it not to get banned. It's a really weird card. I think one of the biggest gripes that players have about Dimension Shifter is that once it resolves, there's no way to play around it. Unlike cards like Catch Tier or Rice Heart, which I think is banned but has potential because of all of the Snatch Steal like card effects that we have and the ways that you can play around it. Essentially, there's so many fewer ways to play around Dimension Shifter than a Rice Heart. But a Rice Heart is on the ban list. And while the argument is that Floodgate shouldn't exist, I partially agree. I think that Floodgate spell and trap cards are like the worst thing in the world. But Floodgate monsters, we gotta give it a little bit more leeway because monsters are a lot more easy to interact with. There's other monsters. There's spell and trap cards to take those monsters. I think when it comes to game design, Cashier or Rice Heart is one of the better designed cards. because it's already so susceptible to so many cards in the game and has ways to be countered. I think it's one of those cards that could potentially come off the list. Now, Guard Dragon Argapane, no. And this also goes for the other dragon support cards that are banned. Guard Dragon Pisty, number 95 Galaxy, Eclipse Wyvern. Without some type of master rule to prevent players from doing dragon combos plus other things, I think that those cards should stay tucked away in the ban list. I mean, in essence, I'm not saying to keep it banned. I'm actually saying it's banned, but it has potential. Some things will definitely have to change for these cards to come off, but I could see a world. Now, Trap Dust Shoot is representatives for that, Confiscation, Forceful Sentry, etc. We have a way more balanced version in Triple Tactics Talent, so I'm gonna say the Hand Rip card should probably stay banned. It's already punishing enough that you're going second, but these cards reward the player that goes first even more. Glow Up Bulb is one of those cards that can be completely unlimited. Kristan Hockley Fibrix is banned, and if you were going to limit Glow Up Bulb, you defeat the purpose of Glow Up Bulb, seeing that it's only once per duel. I can even see Kristan Hockley Fibrix later on down the line be coming off of the ban list, and it's mainly because I would like to cite it again. Yu-Gi-Oh is a lot faster than this card, especially if you're banning cards like Hot Red Dragon Archfiend Calamity. This card is not as powerful. It's really interesting that I'm saying that. Union Carrier is another one of those banned but potential cards. I think you have to clear up a lot of cards out of the game and prevent Konami's game design from making ridiculous cards. The reason why this card was initially banned was because of players equipping Buster Whelp and cards alike, preventing the opponent from special summoning from the extra deck. But if you do clean those up, then this card is actually a decent card in the game. Sometimes having access to your deck isn't a bad thing, and then other times having access to your entire deck is a terrible thing. Take, for example, Beatrice the Eternal Lady. This is a card that a lot of players have been talking about. Beatrice reminds me of Lava Volcane and Curious. Once the card became incredibly easy to summon, it became busted. The only difference is that at least Curious and Lava Volcane were only during your turn. Beatrice is doing both. This card is one of the very few cards that needs to be banned. And while we're on the topic of having too much access into your deck, I think that it's unfair to say that Symborg Bird of Ancestry needs to stay banned, and it's mainly because it was initially banned because it can summon Barrier Statue of Stormwinds, which look where it's at, but there really needs to be a huge change in game design to make cards like these good. Hypothetically, if we were locked to particular typings, then cards like the Guard Dragon, Symborg, Union Carrier could be very fair cards. But as long as players can have free reign over any given card in the game, these cards become terrible. Fiber Jar was banned because it doesn't incentivize good Yu-Gi-Oh gameplay. If you ever want to stall out the game, you can just Fiber Jar, and then there's even FTKs with this card. Yeah, I'm gonna keep it banned. I think wholeheartedly Wind-Up Carrier's Zenmaity can be limited. The big reason why this card was banned is because there is a hand loop with this card that you would use Wind-Up Hunter to tribute your Wind-Up monsters until your opponent had 0 cards left in their hand. Yeah, there's so many reasons why that's not even going to be a successful strategy in 2020 Yu-Gi-Oh! 2024, my apologies. Zodiac Brawl Pool was banned because Beast Warrior and Zodiac monsters had way too much searchability. They were way too powerful. I think that this is another one of those cards that can come off the ban list with no real repercussion. Modern day Yu-Gi-Oh! Is starting to give search cards to almost every type. Warriors have Reinforcement of the Army, Pyros have Bonfire, even Beast Warriors have another card in Fire Formation Tenki. I am like on the conspiracy that we will receive a Master Duel that will make these cards even more fine-tuned and balanced. But even without them, Zodiac Broad Bull is still stuck to Beast Warrior monsters and doesn't bring it to the field, it adds it to the hand. Meaning that you need to invest at least 1 Zodiac monster or 2 level 4 monsters to have access to Beast Warrior monsters, which aren't necessarily the best type. X-Saber Invoker was limited in Master Duel and done absolutely nothing. I think that the same thing can happen in the TCG. Again, these 2 cards were banned because of Zodiacs, and now Zodiacs really don't pose that much of a threat. Spiral Master Plan was banned because Spirals do a lot of looping and a ton of special summons. Gee, I wonder what other decks can do that in present day Yu-Gi-Oh! It seems that Spiral is pretty much caught up to the times, and while this deck is a lot weaker than some of the strategies that we have today, 100% can be limited and not pose a threat. Fishboard Blaster was banned because it summoned too many times, and Block Dragon was banned because Adamantipators could cycle to Baronne De Fleur and Borlo Savage Dragon easily with this card. I'm gonna put it in copium. There's a very big part of me that believes that Block Dragon needs to come off the ban list, but also at the same time, if you think that Block Dragon is fair and Flame Beurge is not, you're coping. I think we need to come to a consensus that Flame Beurge needs to go onto the ban list to some capacity, or Block Dragon needs to come off. These 2 cards are essentially the exact same card. The only difference is their typing. Fairy Tail Snow in a format where mill cards aren't as powerful, I think it's still banned but has potential. The reason why Fairy Tail Snow was banned was because of tier elements, and let me solve that for you right now. I think any cards that send multiple cards from the deck to the graveyard, like Chaos Ruler, Painful Choice, Sixth Sense even sometimes, should all stay banned. And I actually did not have this opinion on Sixth Sense, but the fact that it can either draw 6 cards or send the top 6 cards, okay, I'm kind of cap. It's a trap card. It's not even that good. Let's be real. I think the difference between Sixth Sense and these other cards that I mentioned is that these cards have a lot more agency. They don't require you to wait an entire turn and potentially get cards into your hand or graveyard, and you don't necessarily know the outcome you're going to get with this card, where these cards, sending cards off the top of your deck to the graveyard has been proven to be ridiculously busted. It's a reason why Lightsworn sends on the end phase and Burning Abyss can't send that many cards. Now, a lot of players want Ghost Sister and Spooky Dogwood banned. You're coping. Ghost Sister is a symptom of the format, not the problem. There definitely needs to be a way to limit the amount of times that players are special summoning, but overall, there's nothing wrong with Dogwood in itself. Heavy Storm is definitely one of those limitable cards now. Destroying your own spell and trap cards isn't as cracked up as it used to be. And Imperial Order is a floodgate card that prevents 1/3 of the entire card pool from being used. I think that this is a really bold take about IP Masquerena. I think that IP Masquerena is a bannable card. It's not IP Masquerena's fault, but Konami keeps producing Link monsters that can do so much. Appaloosa by itself is perfectly fine. It has counters like Ghost Oak. You combine it with IP Masquerena though, it becomes a problem. It even bypasses the drawbacks of certain cards like SP Little Knight skipping the battle phase, which is copium if you think that the card should be limited. Well, maybe not limited, but definitely banned. IP Masquerena turns your links into trap cards, and it's almost like if you wanted to give power to trap cards, you should give power to trap cards and not link monsters that could become trap cards. ESOL Two Tails of the Mobile Might, yeah, unfortunately keep it banned. ESOL support is like the dragon support we were talking about, except this actually creates FTKs. Kaiser Coliseum does not promote any type of fair gameplay unless you're a stun player. This card was originally banned because it's genuinely the same thing as Royal Oppression and stuff, except players will summon monsters that are almost invincible and then set up with a ton of cards that would prevent you from playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Nightmare Mermaid was banned a long time ago. It was banned because it created quite a few combos of special summoning a ton of monsters, but the Orcus strategy is not that good. I think it's banned, but it has potential to come off. Link Kribo was banned to pay for the sins of Snake Eyes. I don't even think that that was fair. Now, I do think that Link Kribo in combination with Appaloosa could pose to be a problem, but that's only good in a deck where level 1 monsters are ridiculously good, and that same level 1 monster can spam out links, which means we have an entirely different problem on our hands, the level 1 deck. Which means that I think that original Sinful Spoils out of all the cards is one of the ban-worthy cards. I think Snake Eyes is strictly a problem because of the type of format that we're in, and I'm going to keep stressing that. We play a card game with less restrictions, so therefore it requires less thought, which means it also, in theory, requires less skill too. Because the theme of the game isn't to find uniqueness or to find a particular strategy that works within its realms. It's to find a collaboration of cards that work incredibly well together and can summon some of the best cards in the game. And banning original tones down Snake Eyes from being able to do that. Mathmech is... keep this thing banned. And I don't even think that it's really Mathmech's fault. The fault 100% belongs into the format that we're in with 1-card combos and no restrictions. Any card that creates a ton of tokens like Blackwing Gofu and Tomahawk have been innately ridiculously busted cards since we have gotten Link monsters, and it's for that exact reason. I wouldn't even trust Auroradon, even though it restricts you to going into Synchros, and Baron and Borreload is banned, just because how Konami can make other cards like that to be ridiculous. Plush Fire has just received an errata to make it almost useless. Ronin Tonin has actually been decently power crept. I think the big problem about Ronin Tonin being on the ban list is that it wasn't Ronin. It's probably totally awesome that should be limited. Soul Charge, this one's gonna be crazy, but I think Soul Charge has a little bit of potential. Now, Soul Charge makes you pay multiples of 1,000 and skips your battle phase, but it summons, yeah, all right, I was definitely coping there. I apologize, guys. Soul Charge was banned because its exact effects printed on the card. It makes combos even more combo. It's a Flame Beurge, except you don't even have to play Snake Eyes, and it's for every deck. The only drawback is if you go first, you'll win more. In my opinion, Sprite L's biggest strength was protecting the monsters that it pointed to, but with cards like Baron and Borreload being banned, I think there's some potential for this card to come off. And Summon Sorceress with its new errata is not even a card anymore. I think there's a lot of things that are impacted by Baron and Borreload, and Super Heavy Samurai Scarecrow could be one of them. I would say could be limited. I could say could be unlimited, but one thing that does need to happen is Konami needs to stop making generic synchro monsters, because outside of that, this deck isn't that powerful anymore. Powder Plant Vert Anaconda is one of those cards that's banned but has a ton of potential. We originally thought that Destiny Hero Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer was one of the best cards in the entire game, and boy, we were right for the time, but we were wrong overall. DPE is almost a cakewalk compared to the cards that we go through today, and Vert Anaconda being able to send a polymerization card from the deck to the graveyard isn't the end of the world. Its restrictions are actually decently fair. I can't believe I'm saying this about some of these cards that are banned. And lastly is Ultimate Offering, a card that I think is one of those surprise moves that Konami will limit. Ultimate Offering was banned because it can summon a myriad of monsters during a turn, but it's a trap card, and Yu-Gi-Oh has gotten a lot faster to be able to deal with threats like this. But that's what I have for this ban list tier list. Let me know if there's something that I'm coping on, big dog. And of course, if you want to see more amazing content, you can go ahead and check out these, so I can catch you on the next one.